Erin and I, thank you. So Erin and I met a long time ago now at another program. And when we went to do our forest school training in the UK, we found that the type of training program that was happening there was really, really focused on the social emotional, very, very heart centered. And it just lit a fire in us. It was everything that we're passionate about and that comes very easily to us. And when the program that we were with was going into more of a STEM direction and working with licensing in the state, then that was a good time for us to find our own path with this particular style of forest school. And so that's where we first got started. And Erin, do you want to give an introduction about your background from coming into it?
Sure. I feel like our coming into it is very similar. I was a an art teacher in public schools for 10 years. Then I also worked as a paraeducator for a few years. And then when my youngest kiddo came along, they were so completely different than my first kiddo. I was like one of those parents that thought I had it like on lock, and I was super judgmental of other parents. And then my second kiddo got here and I was like, oh no, I know nothing. But I did know that my kid did best outside. And so it's kind of a meandering path I took to get here. But I had the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom for a couple of years, and I was like, sweet, like we're gonna take this outside. And so I found a program for them outside. And then it was just kind of snowballed. Like one thing led to another. I absolutely adored it, and my kid thrived. And yeah, eventually I was asked to come on at that program. And then it goes exactly as Cassie said. We went to the UK and our training was beautiful, and I loved it so much. This is my cat, Zuko. um, and yeah, and so then it was like a whole nother thing and just a magical process to create our own forest school, because it's very much an expression of our hearts. Um, and I love it. So that's how I
For
got
me,
into it.
the my background is human development, and I've worked with kids for as long as I was slightly bigger than them, it feels like. And same thing with my kid. I was looking at this little wild child that I couldn't imagine being in an environment where they were unregulated, because they just did so much better if I could add water or add sunshine. That was my parenting strategy. And so that's how I originally found it, was just looking for, there's got to be an outdoor opportunity for more kids. And so yeah, in the training that we did in the UK, what really struck me was how much they married the human development and a lot of the holistic development. And you've got so many theories that are really well studied and rooted in child psychology being integrated into the beauty and the regulating and just the natural world. So having that community and making it into a participant-led opportunity for kids was just the icing on the cake. It brought everything to life that I had been really excited about. I didn't actually finish my teaching degree, so my degree was human development, and I minored in education. But I got to my last semester, and I realized that teaching in a classroom, a traditional classroom, just wasn't going to be my calling. And I walked away thinking I had just wasted my degree. And when I was in the UK, sitting there just covered in dirt head to toe, I realized, oh gosh, like this is the path I've been waiting for. And so Erin had purchased 19 acres up in Evergreen, and we spent the year. So you do, back then it was 5 days of training in the UK, so we'd had to fly out there for that. And then you spend 1 year working on a portfolio, studying theories, using practical skills, developing your like knot tying and bushcraft, and writing up essays and learning about the natural world around you. And then you got to fly back out for another 5 days of an assessment. And so Erin and I wanted to make it more accessible, which is when we first started getting into how to bring the practitioner training here. But I would love to, if it's okay with y'all, share a little bit about what our program looks like so that you know what we've developed, and then we can kind of tie it in together. Does that sound okay? All right. Erin, do you want to go first with what makes our school unique? Because there's so many wonderful programs out in Colorado, and each one stands apart.
Sure. And you're more detail oriented. So I'll give the big picture and then you can fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
So we are a student-led program, based on social emotional growth at the heart of it. So what that looks like practically is the kids get to choose. And every day the kids come, they have a little bit of free play, and then we have a snack and sit in a circle, and they get to decide what we're going to do that day. And some of our most our higher requests, I think, are never things that we banked on in the beginning. I think when I first started this journey, I was like, these kids are going to be so into bushcraft and they're going to want to do art projects with me every day. But I would say at the top is usually imaginative play. And it's so beautiful because we get to see kids that are older still entering into this type of play. So we have kids that are from 7 years old, and then our oldest that is just going to high school this year was 15 years old. And so we get to see even like 13, 14, 15-year-olds still engaging with imaginative play, and it's just lovely because it's not a thing that I ever got to experience growing up. I think that especially if you are raised in mainstream culture, that kind of dies out, prior to middle school usually. But our kids just have these like rich and intricate stories that they tell and characters that they develop. And it's so great. So I'd say that's usually one of the top things. And then we have kids who really like to build structures. And I think like it's so cool because it's just so different than what I experienced in public school. I think in public school it was very, there's goals. We need to meet this, this, and this. Like even in an art curriculum, it was like that. And so, our kids get to like figure it out. If they want to build a structure, like sure, we could teach them how to do it, right? This is a thing that we're trained in, but instead they get to explore and they get to figure it out. And then when they need help, we just kind of get to be their support, right? We get to kind of throw out ideas if they're wanting ideas, or we're just kind of usually observing. And then in the midst of all of this play comes, I think, what we really do, which is, when the conflicts arise, I feel like that's when Cassie and I's job really comes into play. And it's, again, like such a beautiful process. Like we have peace circles. And so every time if there is a conflict, we'll sit down with kids. We make sure that kids know that they're not in trouble, that they're never in trouble at our school. And then we walk them through the process of figuring out a solution together, mending any hurts that came up. And yeah, it's really beautiful. But I feel like that's really where we really get to influence our kids and where we really get to help them grow is with that really hard social emotional growth where like really it's in conflict. Like that's where I think most of the growth for us happens. That was a very, very
and on that's perfect. I think on that note, so the social emotional is key. The participant led is key with the forest school model, and the primary pace around all like that holds it all together is the community. And so that's why it's for a long-term program only. And so even though there are a lot of really amazing programs that are camps or are shorter term session, the forest school purpose in the UK, the way it was established, was to create the relationship. And so having time to sink into that is really necessary. And so I think Paul has it where for a school, it's like if you're going to be running a program that's at least 12 weeks or longer, then that's the type of style you're going for, is something to really allow the kids to create a micro community, which allows them to discover what does agency look like? How do I advocate for myself and other kids here? And then you're nurturing the relationships. A lot of our kids who've come from traditional school programs are used to, if there's a conflict, it just being squashed, like just don't talk to that kid anymore, don't play with that kid. And there's not the time to just sit and soften with each other and hear how to brainstorm with one another. Our friends call it social justice light, I think, or restorative justice light, as it's on this like micro scale with these small kids. But when you've got the commitment from not just the kids but the families, we talk to everyone before they join our program so they know what they're getting into, but we want them to show up so that they can wrestle in that stuff. And The guideline we use for the observation piece that Erin was talking about is it's spices. And so we're looking at their holistic development and evaluating that as an ongoing part of our practice. So we're looking at their social, their physical, their intellectual, their creative side, their emotional side, and their spiritual side. And when we say spiritual, we're always referencing how we fit into the bigger picture. So whether it's nature or a part of community, however that may be. And so the spices guides us. And I think the part that shook us, or at least me the most when we were doing the training, was realizing that we have to take a step back in order to be the best facilitators and educators in this space. The real teachers are the kids. They're the ones that are guiding the day. They're getting what they need out of it. Sometimes we have kids who'll just nap, like they're just tired, and they'll take space in the forest, or they'll go journal, or they'll watch mushrooms, or they'll create games, or they'll pick a fight, honestly. Like sometimes they come in with some stuff from home. And so being able to be aware of all those little pieces that are happening all the time and looking for opportunities. I call myself a social weaver because I really like saying like, oh, this kid looks like they could use some support in, maybe it's impulse control, right? Or maybe it's patience, maybe it's speaking up for themselves. And then I'll look for other kids or games or opportunities and just invite them into that experience. But I feel like it from the outside in, if you were just watching one of our days, you'd be like, they're just playing in the woods. That's it. And it's true, we are just playing in the woods, but there's so much enriching experiences happening with the kids in that space. So I think that fleshes it out a little bit about what the actual program and the nitty gritty day to day looks like for us. And I'd love to tie in with the practitioner training that's coming up. Part of what we were discovering during the pandemic was there was a huge flock of parents trying to figure out what to do for their kids, and teachers exhausted from working in classrooms. And so forest school and outdoor programs started popping up all over. But the people we were talking to weren't feeling like they had the resources to really support the programs that they wanted. So they had the heart, they had the vision, but the know-how felt like they were just piecemealing things together. And that's when we started talking to our friend Paul, who was our trainer and one of our best friends. And we were like, is there any way to make this accessible and to bring it here so that we can still have the experiential learning, which is so pivotal to this? There are a lot of online courses, but when it comes to understanding how community works, how play works, and what it feels like to be on that learner side of things, there's no replacing it. And so this is a time intensive program for the practitioner training, but that's part of the process. Like the buy-in for it is it's just immersive. You gotta like really be there completely. I'm trying to think. Oh, so I messed up. I sent Stacy an email to you right before this, but the link to our practitioner training has a lot more details on it, and I just didn't include the link. So we can send that out afterwards also in case you need more details than we're able to cover. But the practitioner training that's coming up, Paul is going to come out because he's the one that is qualified to actually teach this. Erin and I are going to be working towards our level 4 certification so that eventually we'll be able to offer this, and then it'll be a lot more regular than bringing someone over from the UK. But we just wanted to start making it more accessible, and that was our, Erin is really great at creating opportunities for things to not be totally ironed out and perfect before we start. So we don't know how this is going to go. This is our idea. We want to share it with people. We want them to have the same support and resources we did. And I'm hoping it goes, but we'll find out. I'm trying to think I wrote down some notes about the expectations. Oh, so with the time immersive investment that's going to happen, the portfolio building will be like a year long still. So that part's the same, but one of the big changes is that Paul is coming out and we're doing 8 days consecutively. So instead of breaking it apart in 5 days and then coming back a year later for 5 days, we'll do 8 days of training. That'll include a lot of the practical skills like bushcraft, which we only learn in terms of, Erin was saying kids are often not even interested, or they're interested in using it in a way we didn't expect. But with forest school, the reason we use bushcraft is always coming back to the community of how are we connecting to ourselves, to each other, and to the world around us. And we use these tools, whether the kids have decided as stewardship, tools to take care of trees and the land, or if they do want to make a spoon or something, they're going to be having conversations with us leading up of how does it impact the land? How does it impact our group? What kind of investment are we going to be making if we're taking down a tree? That's something the whole group has to decide for spending that much time, And so bushcraft tools is something that you'll be learning during our training, but then you're going to be getting better and better at those throughout the year, practicing those, not tying, but always with the sense of the connection piece for community. And then you're also going to be learning about like the child psychology, child development, the theories, the background information about forest school, because this one is rooted in the UK. And so learning how to bridge, we're not just interested in the history of forest school, but about our land, where we come from, whose land we're on, and helping the kids to understand that, having those conversations too. So you'll be getting to know your land, the animals that live there, just all the flora, the fauna, and getting really familiar with that kind of stuff. So it spans a lot of different information. You learn how to write up all of the paperwork kind of stuff. So knowing how to make handbooks and policies and procedures, the safety things that are really important, figuring out protocols, all of that. And so that's covered. And then I was really excited about the risk assessment piece because we get a lot of parents who are really worried about sending out their kids. You've got fire lighting, you've got bow saws. How are you keeping my kids safe? And learning the value of risky play and being able to communicate that effectively to parents is really important for their buy-in of seeing that we're going to be there to support your kids, knowing how, as they figure out how to climb trees and how to be safe, but that it's really, really important for their development to engage in risky play. And so we have, there's an actual assessment form that we use that now it's just kind of like mentally we do this on the fly all the time with everything, but initially having that as an assessment tool to look at and be able to evaluate the risks was a really helpful tool. So it's just like a wide range. It's so comprehensive, and I don't think Erin and I had any idea how much it would touch on. And so when we left that program, that training, we felt really good about starting this up and feeling like we had the tools and knew who to talk to. And then you get support throughout the year also. Paul will be hosting different calls and mentorships. And so there's a lot of communication that happens in that year as people are figuring out what kind of program they're going to be forming. And so this practitioner training is specifically, like I mentioned, for people doing long-term community participant-led programs, but it's also sorry that I wanted to make sure. Oh, it's for, yes. So I've gotten emails asking if people can use it if they just do camps. There are other trainings that will eventually be offered, but this one is specifically for people looking at those long-term forest school programs. Erin, is there anything I'm skipping right over in my blur?
I don't think so. I think the
So
only
far?
thing like coming to mind was like what the coursework actually looks like. That was coming up for me, and I guess I'll just talk about it since answer with the coursework. you kind of get to decide how you tackle each of these pieces, and I think it was so fascinating to me, and I can't tell you how much I loved this training, but it was so interesting coming from a public school background. And like one of my biggest qualms, like as a teacher with kids today, was like my kids really struggled to have flexibility in the classroom. Like even with something like art supplies, like we would start every time we start with a new art supply, I would put it in front of them and be like, okay, we have like a half hour. I just want you to play with it. I want you to like see what you can do. And like across the board, particularly with eighth graders, they totally struggled with that. And they were like, what? Like they couldn't handle not knowing what the right answer was, right? And then this coursework came along and I was like, what do you mean I get to do this how I want to do it? Like, so you're telling me like I could just draw pretty pictures about these plants with like some random facts in a sketchbook? And Paul was like, no, yeah, that's great. And so it was like I was then confronted with like the fact that I had never really had ownership over my own learning in this way before. And so to be able to experience a little piece of what a lot of my students had been feeling all of these years was just fascinating to me and amazing. And I really got to like dig in and see how I wanted to learn best, right? Like what I wanted to experiment with. And so it was just really cool being able to like go through a mini journey of what, you know, our kids are often coming across. And so, yeah, that was the only piece that I was thinking I wanted to add, Cass.
Awesome. No, that's a really, really important piece of it too. And we wrap up. So, like I said, originally it used to be 5 days on the front end, 5 days on the back end. Now, instead, we're doing that 8 days on the front end. And then a year later, after the initial training, Paul will come back out and he'll do an evaluation where he comes to your program, because you'll be running a 6-week minimum baseline where you have at least 3 kids participating in a weekly program, and they call it a baseline because this is your practice. You can do as many of them as you want, but you have to be in session when Paul comes out, and he'll be doing an evaluation for about 90 minutes. And it's just an opportunity for him to see how you're integrating the Forest School ethos and values into the program. So it's all like there's a conversation beforehand, there's some conversation afterwards. And so it's all very mellow. It's not about like a pass fail. It's about answering questions and making sure you feel supported and that you're understanding the gist of what we've been covering. So I think that'll be it for what our training does. And then outside of that, we also have people take wilderness first aid and CPR, those kinds of things, but that's not a part of our program. That's just something that is really important as far as being safe in those outdoor environments. So I would love to open it up, since Erin sounds like we covered most of it that we can think of. And so open up to questions that y'all have, and we'll go from there.
It was a great detail and overview. I'm excited to hear some more about it and hear specific questions. So if anyone has those, please direct those to Cassie and Erin. I have a list of questions, but I don't. Go, Lori. Yeah.
I know I saw your ad in one of the emails. Thank you, Stacy. What are the dates for this session? I thought
June 1st through 8th is what
24
for this. Yes, 2020. Yes, 2024.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And at your location.
Yeah, that's
yes,
correct.
Yeah, at our location. And
yeah. Sorry, my internet's so laggy.
What?
My internet's awful. We're in Evergreen, so we're like 5 minutes from the intersection of I-70 and Evergreen Parkway.
And then the following year, when practitioners would be running their program, we would be coming to your location, wherever that happens to be. We'll be driving out there.
Which is why we're only doing Colorado people, so that we can make sure to get to everybody.
Yeah.
And about how many people are going to be in this sort of first round of US side kindergarten?
He has it capped.
Okay.
I believe he said, and Erin, maybe you remember, it's supposed to be like 10 to 13. Is that right? Does that sound correct to you? He keeps it small.
I know 14 maybe is like, no more than 14, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be spending the whole day together. So we want to make sure that he's part of that. The purpose of keeping it on that smaller side is so that we're developing that little community and that sense of it over the course of those 8 days also. And the relationships that we made during that time, just cooking together, playing together, learning together. It was just an invaluable part of the experience. Sure. Anyone else got anything?
Your website and it says June 1st to June 8th for the dates. Yes. Did you all change it? Didn't you just say later, or did I mishear that?
That was for, are you referring to when we were going to have it previously and we had to cancel, or is this should be June 1st to 8th.
June 1st to 8th is right.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you said later this just now. I just want to be sure I had the right dates.
That's right.
And then you got him.
And is Paul coming back roughly that same period the following year for the evaluation?
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be around then. Like we'll wait till, I think our plan is it'll be after our school semester, roughly around the same time. And hopefully when we sent out our Google form to get people's feedback on when best works for them, it was such a wide range and very little overlap. So we had to kind of work with what'll work best for Paul and us, and then the vast majority, but it's tricky to make it work for everyone. I was going to add on though, Heather, to that when you're doing your program, this can also, it's one of those places that it can look a lot of different ways. And so some people, it's just like on a weekend with some neighborhood kids in a local park. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, you know, like it's really more about that opportunity to be regularly working and implementing these ideas. And so I just wanted to make that clear too, that there's a lot of flexibility around. You can make it a thing where people are paying you. It can be an opportunity to give back to the community, and it's your volunteer time. So a lot of flexibility.
I want to ask a question about your spices that you talked about in your specific program. Is that something that you two created, or does that come out of, was it inspired out of this training? Because I just think that that was so lovely.
Yeah, that's a part of it was a big part of the holistic development. So there's 6 principles guide it, and then the spices guide it. So this was very much integrated into the program that we were trained with.
Got it. Yeah. And I just piggyback on.
Anything else?
Can I ask one more question? Just for
Sure.
I will resend Laz and I will resend out a thing, Cassie, just to make sure that the links are correct so that people have those. Because I know we didn't quite have that when you clicked on them. I think once you transfer them via different emails or whatever, something happened in the process. Could be my tech skills for sure. So we'll get that out. And then the other thing is just, I know other people are interested, and I know you have this sign up date coming up. What other things can I do to help get proper information in the hands of people? And then also piggyback of that, I have some friends who don't have their forest programs ready or up and working, but they have done other trainings and they're really interested in this training because of the bushcraft and the community qualities that are happening within this program as well. So would they not be considered, since there's not a program already, or like you just said a minute ago, they could gather their neighborhood kiddos, do a program, or yeah, where does that shake down in terms of, because you only have 10 or 15 spots, so.
Yeah. The first is to speak to the deadline you're referring to keep the same rate as what the training would have been for this previous summer that didn't go. September 1st is the deadline for getting the deposit in for that. And once people talk to me, then that's when we'll send them the registration link to be able to sign up. And then to the second question, when we were talking to Paul about it, he was saying that because this is brand new to have this type of certification here and training, and there's no real requirement for it, we're trying to make sure that the people who are signing up for it are all on the same page about its purpose, so that it's drawing in practitioners, not that they're currently practicing, but that they have the intention of going and having a practice. Does that make sense? So that we're all working together on it. And there are just so many different programs that we want to distinguish what a level 3 certification, you can tell what the difference is between that kind of skill versus someone who wants to take as many trainings and then it's more dabbling but not being implemented. And he wants at this point to make sure that it's going with people who are building a community, building a participant-led forest school program.
I just want to add too, oh, I'm muted. No, I'm not. Okay. I just wanted to add too that this year we did some just bushcraft classes. And we will probably do that again next year. So if there are people that are interested in just bushcraft or just fire building or something specific, even if it's just a group of like 5 kids, we would probably, or 5 adults, we would be happy to run a training on that because that's what we did this year. They were just half day or full day workshops. I think Paul might be coming in January too, although we haven't confirmed that, but he mentioned that last time. So we'll likely run those in June, maybe the end of May when Paul comes out next year. So if there are people that are interested in just bushcraft stuff, like definitely reach out and let us know.
And we even did some educational pieces too. So some of them were bushcraft and some of them were geared more towards theory and implementing these strategies in the type of environments people are working in, even if it's not a forest school. So I can send those to you, keep you in the loop.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And I know, Jennifer, you've been putting out wonderful things for us to know about within your collective as well. So we'll get the word out and more will find their nourishment. So thank you, both of you, for what you're doing. It's just inspiring to hear.
Hi, Cassie and Erin. Great to have you. Yes, we promoted last time. Anytime you have something, let me know and I'll be glad to get it into the collective.
Awesome.
So nice to see some of your faces and meet new ones.
I love your title, by the way, Jennifer. Mycelium director. It's fantastic.
Thank you. That was given with honor from Ryan, and I love it too. I'm like, I'm never going back to the normal title. It's the best.
Yep. It really is.
Thank you again, Erin and Cassie, for taking the time to share with us. And I wish you the best on the upcoming school year. I think you said it started on Monday. Did I get that right?
We'll start Monday.
You'll start Monday. Yeah. All right. Lots of good things happening.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it.
Yes, please come back and get